Okay, this video today is going to be another cutting process on the Metalwork lathe. We're going to be looking at how to do parallel turning. Okay, let's get straight into it. Right then, so with the bar that I've got on the lathe already, in the last video I did with the cutting processes, we have already faced the bar off, so we've got a nice machine surface at the front. What we want to do now is, and it might be something you have to do within a project that you're working on in the Metalwork lathe, is to do what's called parallel turning. Parallel turning is essentially cutting down the length of the bar and reducing the diameter of the bar. Before we start, we need to make sure we get the cutting tool set up to the correct angle. So at the moment, we've got this cutting tip here set to an angle where it's the only thing that's going to be cutting is the leading tip edge here, which basically allows us to run across the face of our metal. But what we want to do to get parallel turning is we actually want this leading edge plus the side of the cutting tip to be running down the length of my material. All right. So at the moment, the tool post is actually set into an angle. So we need to change the angle of the tool post. Okay, so to move the angle of the tool post, we have the tool post key, basically a hex code key, which allows us to loosen the center bolt. Okay, so with the tool post now loose, what we can actually do is use the carriage wheel and the cross slide to bring the tool gently forward, so that you're allowing the tool to rest up against our faced off surface. So now we've got the tool resting at the correct angle. So what I can do now is I can, if I zoom out, I can take the tool post, tighten it up, and now that's set to the correct angle that I'm happy with. Okay, so with the parallel turning process, you're using the same two handles again as we did with the facing off process. You've got your carriage wheel again, which I repeat moves the carriage wheel left and right, and you will also use the cross slide. So quick demonstration about how you do the parallel turning. Like I say, cross slide and the carriage wheel, the two handles we're going to use, but it's the opposite way around from the facing off. What we want to do is, using the cross slide, is we actually want to set the distance of, or the depth of distance we want to work with. Using the cross slide, so we're going to cut inwards, so I've over exaggerated there to show you what it needs to be doing. So bring the tool forward, and then once we've got it set to the correct depth, two hands onto the carriage wheel, and then you would slowly work that down the length of the bar to whatever distance you needed it to be. Okay, and I'll show you how you can set the distance as well, so you don't go beyond the point that you need to. Okay. Okay then, so before you do any parallel turning, you need to make sure you set the machine up so that, one, your cutting tip is not going to go beyond your measurement of how far down you want the parallel turn, but also you can set the machine up so that you can get a more accurate reading of how much material you're taking off in terms of the diameter of the bar. Okay, so first thing is, at the front of the machine, you've got this little kind of depth stop. Okay, you can just spin it around. It's got different lengths of bar stuck to it, and you can just simply turn this around to get to the desired one you want. So find one that's close enough to it. So that one's not quite there. That one's a little bit. That one's, so either one of those two that I have there would be close enough. All right, but my cutting tool is not quite there yet. If you can just about see where my fingernail is, there's a little pencil mark there which I've measured 15 mil. So if you find one that best suits, if it's not one that's going to get exactly there, what you can do is the compound slide at the top of the machine, you can just give that a couple of spins until you get to your desired length. So now I've matched my cutting tip up with where I want to cut in terms of my length. So now, using my carriage wheel, I will always stop at that 15 mil. I can't go beyond the length because I've set it up using this. All right, so that's my length now secure in terms of my length of my parallel turning. Okay, so now that I've set my lathe up so that it's going to reach my 15 mil mark and no more, I want to make sure that I get a bit more accurate reading with my diameter cuts. Okay, so what I want to do is I just want to bring the edge of the cutting tip right up so that it's touching the bar and no more. So that's it touching there. So now that I've got the tool resting up against my metal, I can now look at my electronic reader on the machine. And what I want to do is I've got two readings, one at the top and the bottom. The bottom number here is referring to the carriage wheel. So if I move that left and right, you'll see the number go up or down. All right, I don't need to worry about this one because I've already set the distance in terms of the length of my parallel turning using the depth stop at the front of the lathe. The top number is referring to the movement of the cross slide. So if I move it forwards and if I move it backwards, you can see the number changing. So what I want to do with this top number is I actually want to put this number back to 0. Because my tool is now resting against the metal, if I press this little yellow arrow here, it's now set that back to 0. So if I want to take 1/2 mil cut, then if I just turn this around, it's going to go minus because it's going to go in towards the metal. So there's just about 0.525. That's going to take that much material off at a time. So that gives me a bit more accurate reading to rough down my material. All right, so what I mean by that is if I want to take this material down by 5 mil, then what I would do is with using the machine here and the numbers is I would take maybe around about 4 mil. All right, so I would take just about 4 and a bit mil off at this point using this machine. And then what I would then do is, because there's a little bit of play in terms of you set the tool up against your metal, if you pushed it in too far or there's a little gap, that might not be completely accurate, this number, okay? But if you want to take 5 mil off, take about 4 mil off on this, and then what I would suggest you do is the last mil or so is use what's called a vernier. Okay, so using your vernier, I would make sure you use this just to check the diameter of your bar at that kind of last stage, okay? So use the number at the top here to rough your material down quite quickly to almost the size that you need, but then use your vernier, and we've got electronic verniers here that we can use. This will guarantee you get a little bit more accurate. So using these two tools, you should get your material fairly accurate. Okay, so another quick process to be able to get your bar down to the desired diameter for your different various projects that you're going to have to do throughout the Metalwork course. Okay, so provided you do all the pre-checks and make sure your lathe is set up to the depth in terms of how far you want to cut down, and using your electronic gauge as well as your vernier, you should get fairly accurate measurements. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll speak to you next time.